Good evening, I'm Emma Jane Vea and this is Television Tonga News. In the headlines, the King and Queen of Tonga returned to Tongatapu from Ha'apai's Royal Agriculture Show. Tonga loses its first United Nations representative, Lord Damoipea Tupou, at the age of 70. And Her Royal Highness Princess Melisi Uliktapu Kalani Valfutafili launches a set of new computers at the Seattle-Tai Theological College during its double celebrations. These and more stories, including news from the Pacific, sports, world and the weather forecast later on in this bulletin. Let's take a look at the news in detail. Their Majesties King Dabo VI and Queen Anaspa'u have returned to Tongatapu after officiating at Ha'apai's Royal Agriculture and Handicrafts Show. The King and Queen will visit Ewa tomorrow to officiate at its Royal Agricultural Show, which will be held on Saturday. We'll join Linda Filiai with the details.
Their Majesties King Dabo VI and Queen Anaspa'u have returned safely to Tongatapu after they officiated at various Royal Agricultural Show in Outer Islands. The Royal Agricultural Show 2013 first began in the two Niuas, then Vava'u, and most recently on the island of Ha'apai yesterday. Radio and Television Tonga News correspondent in Ha'apai, Moimoi Fahua, was at Bilolevu Airport when their Majesties departed from the island around noon today. He says student parents and many more lined the roadside from Whaleloa to the airport to farewell to their Majesties. The Ha'apai Governor Lord Tuiha'angana, church leaders and many others were also at the airport to bid farewell to the King and Queen of Tonga. Meanwhile, the head of the Ministry of Agriculture, Food, Forestries and Fisheries in Ewa, Solomon Vaigeli, told Radio and Television Tonga News that Their Majesty will arrive in Ewa tomorrow to officially open the Royal Agriculture Show on Saturday. He adds that they've made a lot of preparation and are ready. The show will be held on New Agi grounds in Nangaha.
The Honourable Prime Minister Lord Tuivavanoa will join Polynesian Leaders Group, or PLG, Heads of Government, in its third annual meeting held in Auckland, New Zealand on the 30th of August. That's according to information from the Ministry of Information and Communications. Whataifaiga'a has that report.
The Polynesian Leaders Group, or BLG, is an international governmental cooperation group bringing together independent or self-governing territories in Polynesia. The group collectively seeks ways to safeguard the future of Polynesian people, cultures and traditions. The BLG meetings have provided a platform for dialogue and cooperation on regional issues of sustainable economic prosperity, observation of democratic values, and independence in developing fields like education, transport, trade and investment, environmental conservation and climate change mitigation for the Polynesian states. The third meeting will continue to discuss ways in which the member states can strengthen the BLG and develop relations both bilaterally and sub-regionally. The meeting precedes the Pacific Islands Leaders Forum meeting in Majuro from September 3rd until the 6th of this year. Since its inception in 2011, hosted by the Samoan Prime Minister Tuilaepa Sailele Malielegaoi, the second PLG meeting was hosted by the Cook Islands in Rarotonga in August 2012. BLG comprises of the 8 founding members: Tonga, Samoa, Tuvalu, Cook Islands, Niue, American Samoa, French Polynesia, and Tokelau. For Television Tonga News, I'm Whataifaiga'a.
Lord Damoipea Tupou of Dola and Kotu, also known as Sonatane Toakina Molahi Damoipea Tupou, has passed away at the age of 70. He passed away at Viola Hospital early Monday morning, August 12th. This is confirmed to Television Tonga News this morning by a family member. We'll join Anasiu Falekaono with the details.
According to the Ministry of Information and Communications, Lord Damoipea Tupou of Dola and Kotu served in government for many years. He joined the civil service in 1969 as the Assistant Secretary at the Prime Minister's office. He was appointed Secretary for Foreign Affairs in 1979. He served as a High Commissioner to the Court of St. James in the United Kingdom in 1983 with concurrent accreditation as Ambassador to Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, the Soviet Union, the United States of America, and the European Commission. He returned again to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1986 and served as a secretary there until posting to set up at the United Nations mission in New York in 1999. While he was a member of the UN, he was also an ambassador extraordinary and plenipotentiary to the United States of America, Chile, Cuba, Mexico, and Venezuela, and the High Commissioner to Canada. From 1999 to 2004, he held his post of permanent representative to the UN and ambassador to the US. He was then recalled to take up an appointment of Minister for Foreign Affairs. In 2005, he was also appointed the acting Minister for Tonga Defence Services and the acting Governor of Vavaong. Lord Tamuepeau Tupo's death comes after his retirement last month. Lord Tamuepeau Tupo was married to the Queen Mother's younger sister, late Lady Amelia Latuniwa Tamuepeau Tupo. They are survived by their 4 children, Lady Kalanivalu Fotofili, Miss Odette Tupo Ahomee, Captain Christian David Fahaivalu Tupo, and Latasi Toto Pau Tupo. According to a family member, the funeral of Lord Tamuepeau Tupo will be held this Saturday at their residence at Fa'anawa, and the burial ceremony will be at the Cemetery Church this Saturday, 17th August 2013. Ana Silvalicano for Television Tonga News.
A newly imposed duty and excise tax rate has gone up for tobacco and down for fish products. That was approved by His Majesty's Cabinet in support of promoting a healthier diet and lifestyle and reducing the risk of non-communicable diseases or NCDs. The new duty and excise tax rate for tobacco has increased by 40 pa'anga. This is an increase of imported cigarettes from 210 pa'anga per 1,000 sticks to 250 pa'anga. Fish products, on the other hand, has decreased by 15%. The double anniversary celebrations of the Seattle Theological College continued today on the college grounds. The school celebrates its 65th anniversary and 25 years of its Bachelor's of Divinity program. One of the events held during the celebration is the launch of new technical equipment for the school. Sinilatu has more on that story.
The guest of honor at Seattle Theological College's double celebration, Her Royal Highness Princess Mele Si'iluktapu Kalanivalu Fotofili, launched the new computers for the school. This is an assistance from ex-students in Australia. The chairman of Australia's ex-students, Reverend Matafonua Fotofili, presented the donations on their behalf. Radio Tonga's announcer at the celebrations, Melevaka Havili, said there are 6 new computers set up in the room. Her Royal Highness Princess Ti'iluk was joined by former presidents of the FWC of Tonga, such as Reverend Dr. Alifereti Malakai Mone and Reverend Dr. Lopeti Taufa, amongst others, to witness the event. The new computers were launched after a service and Holy Communion was held at the Old Zion or Sayone Motua on the Nafualu campus. This was the second day into the school's celebrations.
From the Supreme Court, evidence given by Air New Zealand's General Manager in a trial enters its 8th day. Sue Gardner was called as the first witness in a jury trial of a former travel consultant of the Forum Travel Limited, Dafolosa Bloomfield. Mrs. Bloomfield is allegedly charged for embezzlement and theft. She has pleaded not guilty to the charges. She's alleged of fraudulently converting 179,000 pa'anga and the theft of airline tickets worth more than 246,000 pa'anga from Forum Travel Limited. The allegations were made while Mrs. Bloomfield was employed there from September 2009 to March 2010. Justice Charles Cato presides over the trial, which also has 7 jurors. Aminias Gefu is the Crown Counsel, while Manaka Fusi represents the accused. Another person who has been accused on similar charges, Whangatua Va, changed his plea last week from not guilty to guilty. He's charged for embezzlement and theft of more than 88,000 pa'anga. The Crown withdrew its 3rd count of theft of airline tickets worth the same amount. Whangatua Whakawā will be sentenced September 6. Tonga is amongst 4 other Pacific Island countries which will gain access over the next 4 years to 14.5 million Australian dollars. The funding comes under the 2nd phase of the Australian government-funded program, FARMA. Sinladu tells you more.
The Pacific Horticultural and Agricultural Market Access Program, or FARMA, is in its second phase. It continues to develop the necessary systems and skills for exporting countries to reliably meet the conditions outlined by importing country regulatory authorities. That is, once access has been gained. In a report from PAC News states, the regional program has helped strengthen export pathways for watermelons from Tonga. The program has followed an intensive approach in Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, Vanuatu, and Solomon Islands. This includes more general market access support services being provided to countries across the region by SPC's Biosecurity and Trade team. The launch of FARMA's second phase at the USB Oceania Centre will be attended by the Acting Australia High Commissioner Glenn Miles, Fiji Minister for Primary Industries, Honourable Inya Sevuriratu, and the Deputy Director General of SPC Fekita Moiloa Utoikamanu. Delegates from Tonga include Tutom Nakao, who manages the program, Dr. Viljami from the Ministry of Agriculture, and Dr. Viljami Kami from the Quarantine, amongst other members. FARMA has been working in partnership with SPC for the last 2.5 years to help Pacific Island countries develop exports of primary sector products such as agricultural, horticultural, forest, and fish products.
That's the local news. Pacific is next. From the Pacific, Fiji may be an outcast as far as the Pacific Islands Forum is concerned, but now the Bainimarama regime has launched a new regional organisation of its own. It's called the Pacific Islands Development Forum, just one word different from the organisation from which it has been banned since 2009. As Pacific correspondent Sean Dorney reports, Fiji secured the support of the interesting donors to set up its outfit.
A full military parade greeted the delegates to the inaugural meeting of the Pacific Islands Development Forum. There was a traditional kava ceremony in honour of the chief guest, the Prime Minister of East Timor, Janana Gusmao, who was then invited to read out, in the Fijian language, a call to the ancestors to guide deliberations.
O irana nonda kaze, ere itauke ni vanua, kena yalo vekabula.
Preparations for this meeting began last year, and several weeks ago at a business conference in Brisbane, Fiji's Foreign Minister Ratu Enoke Kumbumbola outlined the rationale.
In Fiji's case, our continuing suspension from the Pacific Islands Forum has convinced us that Australia and New Zealand have a disproportionate influence over its affairs that is clearly to our detriment and sometimes the detriment of our neighbours. So Fiji wants to rearrange the furniture with a regional body that more appropriately reflects the concerns of the Pacific Island nations.
Fiji's Prime Minister Commodore Frank Bainimarama says that unlike the Pacific Islands Forum, his Pacific Islands Development Forum will involve not only governments but business and civil society.
Why do we need a new body, a new framework of cooperation? Because the existing regional structure for the past 4 decades, the Pacific Islands Forum, is for governments only, and has also come to be dominated only by a few. In too many instances, it no longer genuinely represents our interests and needs.
Fiji received the funding for the meeting from China, which has poured money into Fiji since the coup, and also from its newfound friends outside the region.
To those who have contributed to the cost of staging the event, China, Russia, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates, you have our grateful thanks.
It's a bit of a coup for him to get that financial support, even though it's really fairly minimal in sort of overall donor terms, but still that the interest is there, and those countries sent representatives, so there must be something in it for them.
It was the non-traditional donors, if you like, that were supporting this regional meeting. There was some disappointment, as you know, that some leaders weren't present and that there were a number of the Polynesian states that weren't present. And Ratu Noke himself made some reference to the belief that Australia and New Zealand may have interfered with some attendance, and that is a continuing irritant for Fiji.
The Fiji newspaper, which most strongly supports the Bainimarama regime, the Fiji Sun, attacked Papua New Guinea's Prime Minister Peter O'Neill for not being there. And although Fiji TV sought a reaction from an annoyed PNG planning minister, it added to the insult by getting O'Neill's first name wrong.
Well, there weren't a whole lot of leaders. There were only, I think, 4: East Timor, Solomon Islands, Kiribati, the FSM and Nauru, in fact 5. Other countries sent ministers and senior officials, so probably not as good as Fiji hoped for, but a reasonable turnout.
It is unfortunate that certain Pacific countries are not here with us. They have chosen to regard this forum as a political event rather than grasp its true purpose, which is to address the very real threat that our people face and could be catastrophic if we don't act in a collaborative and unselfish manner.
Commodore Bainimarama made climate change the central focus of the meeting.
We are not interested in arcane debates about the cause of climate change. It is happening, and rising sea levels are for us a real and present danger. We are not interested in the excuses of the carbon-emitting countries selfishly trying to protect their own economies by refusing to sign up to emission targets.
At the end of the 3-day meeting, Commodore Bainimarama announced that Fiji would host a new secretariat for his development forum.
Leaders and officials are now, and ministers are occupied by attending to the priorities of many individual institutions and new secretariats, and having to fundraise for them and find staff for them. So the risk that they take their eye off the ball in terms of the regional agenda is very real.
Commodore Bainimarama is determined to sideline Australia and New Zealand in setting an agenda for the Pacific. But more Pacific Island leaders will be at next month's Pacific Islands Forum meeting than he attracted to Fiji.
Sports is up next with Sini Latu.
In sports, Richie McCaw will complete his return from a 6-month sabbatical when he captains New Zealand against Australia on Saturday. McCaw starts at open side flanker after a steady return to match fitness with a series of brief appearances for the Crusaders, packing down alongside Liam Mazam and Crusaders teammate Kieran Reid in the back row. Julian Savea starts on the left wing with Aaron Cruden in for the injured Dan Carter, partnering Aaron Smith at halfback. Tony Woodcock gets the nod ahead of Wyatt Crockett at Low's head prop, whilst Andrew Hoa starts at hooker instead of Kevin Mealamu, who is named amongst the replacements. Ryan Crotty in the number 23 jersey is the only uncapped member of the squad and could make his debut against the Wallabies in Sydney. The match will see both sides operating under the new scrummaging laws for the first time, something which All Blacks head coach Steve Hansen addressed earlier in the week. Ewan McKenzie's ideas and attention to detail have helped convince the Wallabies their new coach has the game plan to upset the All Blacks in his first game at the helm. New coach McKenzie on Thursday will show some of his carefully concealed hand when he names his teammate to meet the All Blacks in Saturday's Rugby Championship and Bledisloe Cup opener at ANZ Stadium. Paul True has stepped down from his position as the Springbok Sevens coach with immediate effect. The South African Rugby Union on Tuesday thanked Paul for his services to Springbok Sevens rugby and paid tribute to the contribution he had made to developing the 7-a-side game in South Africa. SARU President Oregon Hoskins confirmed that after long discussions with both Paul, players and other 7 stakeholders, a mutual decision had been reached to seek a new head coach for the Springbok Sevens team. Paul said although it was a difficult decision to make, he felt the time was right to step down. Paul was appointed as Sevens coach in 2004 after representing the team from 1999 to 2002 at sweeper and later as captain. As coach, he led the team to the IRB World Sevens Series title in 2008 and 2009 and won 14 tournaments on the HSBC 7 Series circuit. He coached the team in 3 Sevens Rugby World Cups and took the team to bronze at the Commonwealth Games in India in 2010. Marina Irakovic has gone out of the Premier WTA tournament in Cincinnati to world number 9 Petra Kvitova, losing 6-4, 6-7, 6-3. Despite being ranked 68 places lower than her opponent from the Czech Republic, Irakovic put up a good fight in this second round match and certainly wasn't overawed in going up against the 2011 Wimbledon champion. The match lasted just over 2.5 hours and was one that Irakovic will take plenty of confidence from heading into the US Open later this month. It took Kvitova 45 minutes to win the first set, in which there was just the one break of serve, despite Irakovic having 5 break points. There was a break of serve for both players early in the second set, but in the 8th game, Irakovic was broken again, putting Kvitova into a position to serve for the match, which she achieved and lost just 1 point along the way. Emirates Team New Zealand have been warned not to look too far ahead as they prepare to defend their unbeaten record against Luna Rossa Challenge in the America's Cup Challenger finals next week. The opening 2 races of a first-to-7 Louis Vuitton Cup series are scheduled for Sunday. NZT and the Kiwis are red-hot favourites to progress through to a showdown with Oracle Team USA for sailing's ultimate prize next month. On paper, Team New Zealand looks like an easy victor, suggests leading commentator Gary Jobson, who cautions that the Italians cannot be underestimated after sweeping Artemis Racing 4-0 in the Vuitton semis. While Luna Rossa were improving their racing skills out on the San Francisco Bay course, the Kiwis were tinkering, attempting to wring a few more knots out of their AC-72 catamaran. And that's sports news.
From World News, in Egypt, Cairo is in chaos after an army operation to clear out protesters who've been staging sit-ins for weeks. Scores of people have been killed and many more injured in clashes between security forces and supporters of ousted President Mohamed Morsi. The Muslim Brotherhood has condemned the operation as a massacre. The army says it has no alternative.
After weeks of threats, the authorities finally decided to act. Security forces moved in just before dawn to clear out protesters at 2 separate Cairo sit-ins. As helicopters hovered overhead, bulldozers provided support on the ground, crushing tents and removing sandbags. Riot police cleared out the smaller Nada Square quickly, but it was a different story at the larger protest outside the Rada Mosque. A Washington Post journalist says the situation escalated quickly on the streets around the mosque.
The police then opened fire on those protesters, first with tear gas and then with a barrage of heavy gunfire. Having covered several war zones, I heard machine gun fire. It was very, very rapid.
The army says it's tried to minimise the bloodshed and is providing safe exit routes for the protesters. But the Muslim Brotherhood is calling it a massacre, saying the only thing getting out has been a stream of ambulances. Reports on the death toll vary wildly, but hundreds of people are being treated at nearby field hospitals. The interim government says some of its forces have also been killed. It's arrested more than 200 protesters, some of whom were armed. It says this footage shows protesters shooting at security forces. The vision cannot be independently verified. Covering the situation is proving exceedingly difficult for journalists on the ground.
The press has not been allowed to get inside the sit-in. Those of us who have tried to approach since the breakup started I was and my team, we were directly threatened by police officers on multiple occasions. One officer told my colleague that if he saw us again, he would shoot him in the foot or in the leg.
And it appears the security forces are following through on those threats.
We turned on the generators and the cameraman was shot. He was sniped right in front of us on our stage.
The authorities are trying to prevent protesters from starting up another sit-in at a new site. They've blocked off roads and have closed the train lines into and out of Cairo. Muslim Brotherhood officials are already trying to use the latest violence as a rallying point for further protests and insist they'll stay on the streets until Mohamed Morsi is reinstated as president. With the army asserting its authority so strongly, that prospect seems further away than ever.
That's world news. Now for today's weather bulletin. A weak trough lies slow moving between Vava'o and Niue. Meanwhile, a southeast wind flow prevails over the group. Forecast midnight tomorrow for Tonga, light to moderate southeast winds, mainly fine apart from brief showers over the Niues. For Saturday, light to moderate south to southeast winds, mainly fine apart from brief showers over the Niues. The temperature forecast for Nuku'alofa will reach a minimum of 18 degrees Celsius tonight. Marine weather bulletin, forecast midnight tomorrow for all Tonga coastal waters, southeast winds 10 to 20 knots with slight to moderate seas. That's the weather bulletin, but before I go, let's take a final look at our top stories. The King and Queen of Tonga returned to Tongatapu from Ha'apai's Royal Agricultural Show. Tonga loses its first United Nations representative, Lord Taumui at the age of 70. And Her Royal Highness Princess Melesi'uliktapu Kalanival Fotofili launches a set of new computers at the Siatautai Theological College during its double celebrations. That ends our news for tonight. For more on these stories, you can call us on 23556 or 28812. Or you can check out our website at www.tonga-broadcasting.net. Thanks for watching. I'm Emma Jane Bear. Good evening.